Hi, Dr. Whitman. Hi, class. My name's Noelle Adams, and I've been discussing leadership with you guys for the past few weeks. I'm sure you recognize my name, but now you can actually put a face to the name. During our first week of class, we were able to define leadership. We really looked into what leadership entailed, and we looked at the key elements of leadership. We also got a chance to look at leadership skills and the managerial roles. And then towards the end of our reading, we learned about the leadership theory paradigms, which we'll discuss more in this assignment. During our second week, we really went into personality and traits, and we talked about the Big Five personality profile, and we talked about some of the early theories that were involved with leadership studies. We got into the achievement motivation theory and the leadership motive theory. We also talked about attitudes in leadership, including Theory X, Theory Y. We talked about ethics of leadership, and then the guides to ethical behavior. During our third week, we looked at leadership behavior and motivation, and then we looked at how the shift went from trait theory to behavior theory to motivation theory. And that brings us to week 4. So in this week's assignment, we're going to be talking about contingency leadership theory, the leadership continuum theory, path goal leadership theory, and leadership substitutes theory. As we previously learned, trait and behavioral leadership theories were attempts to find one best leadership style in all different situations. In contrast to that, the contingency leadership theory was an attempt to explain appropriate leadership styles based on different things like the leader, the followers, and the situation. So rather than a leader choosing their style of leadership based on their strength or on their personality traits, they're going to choose it based on the situation and the followers that they're trying to lead, and basically factor in other things other than just what they're best at. So as we know, the word contingency means that it is dependent on something else. And in order for a leader to be effective, they must be able to adjust to the situation and to the followers' needs. Next is leadership continuum theory. This is a type of contingency leadership that was developed in the 1950s, and it's based on the thought that behavior is on a continuum from boss-centered to subordinate-centered leadership. It focuses on who makes the decision, and there are 7 different leadership styles within this theory. The leadership continuum theory is basically used to determine which leadership style on the continuum the leader should choose. Before choosing one of the 7 leadership styles, they must consider the following 3 variables. The first is boss, and basically that's just the leader's personality and behavioral preferred style. And the second one is the subordinates, and that's the follower's preferred style for the leader. The third is the situation. It's basically looking at the environmental considerations and those factors. These factors are very subjective, and that's what makes this leadership style difficult because it's hard to determine which style to use and when to use it. Our next theory is the path goal leadership theory. And this theory is used to choose leadership style appropriate to the situation in order to maximize performance and job satisfaction. If you think back to our earlier readings, you might remember the motivation theories of goal setting and expectancy theory. It's based on those motivation theories. Within this theory, the leader is responsible for motivating the followers and helping them attain personal and organizational goals. Motivation can be increased by the leader by helping the follower understand clear objectives so that they can be successful and complete the task at hand. Another way that they can increase motivation is by increasing the rewards that the follower happens to value. And this leadership theory uses one of 4 different leadership styles. The first is directive, the second is supportive, the third is participative, and the fourth is achievement-oriented. To further detail these leadership styles, I'll go through each one. The first is directive, and that's when the leadership provides a high structure and the follower's ability is low. The second is supportive, and that's when the leader provides a high consideration for the follower and the follower's ability is also high. The third is participative, and the leader includes employees in the decision-making process in this one, and the follower's ability is also high. And in the last one, the achievement-oriented, the leader sets difficult but attainable goals, and the follower's ability is also high. So how's this theory modeled? Well, situational factors basically lead to the leadership style of choice. which then leads to goal achievement. One of the downfalls of this theory is that it can be difficult to know which style to use when, but it is a useful way for leaders to start thinking about how to motivate their followers. As we talked about earlier, contingency means that it is dependent on something else, such as an external factor. There are times in leadership when those factors are outside of the leader's control. This can cause the leader to become unnecessary. So, the leadership substitutes theory suggests that different situational factors can enhance, neutralize, or substitute the leader's behaviors. Some substitutes for leadership would include characteristics of the follower themselves, the task, the organization, etc., that replace the need for a leader or neutralize the leader's behavior. An example of this would be, as stated in our text, self-managed teams. So teams that have been trained heavily and they basically already have it down and they don't really need their leader. Some of these specific characteristics when talking about the follower would be like ability, their skill level, how much knowledge they have, how much training they have. And then if we're talking about the task, some of those characteristics would be routine tasks where they just become adjusted to the task. They get provision of their own feedback. And if we're talking about the organization, it's basically highly regimented, very rigid rules. And so the group becomes very close-knit. But where does the leader come in this case? So when things are already very structured and everything's running pretty much independently of the leader is there to fill in the gaps. So in times where maybe something goes wrong or in times where the leader needs to step in, the leader can be there for that. So the organization that I'm involved with is, I think you guys probably already know that I teach full-time at a local university in the physical therapy department. I am a physical therapist and I just recently started teaching full-time. I previously was adjunct faculty and I did that for a few years prior to taking a full-time position. So now that I'm doing the full-time thing, I'm working with students a lot more, and of the 4 theories that we talked about, I would have to say that the one that works best in my organization would be the path goal leadership theory. So I've mentioned many times in my discussion posts that we practice problem-based learning at this physical therapy program, and basically it goes right in line with the path goal theory. So in PBL, it's self-directed learning for the students. So the students have an opportunity to direct their own learning with my guidance. And so with the path goal leadership theory, basically it's the leader's job to motivate the students or learners or followers and set clear objectives. And that's what we do in PBL. So I give the students a list of objectives for whatever case they're working on, and they have to then go find those, and they get positive feedback and reward when they are successful or when they come up with the information that they're looking for. Since I have been teaching since 2012, I've kind of learned and developed my own teaching and leadership styles, but I also have noticed that each group that I work with is different. So I have to be able to adjust my leadership style to meet the needs of those students. So just like in the path goal leadership theory, I basically take the situational factor, the environment of the students and their dynamic, and then I choose my leadership style accordingly. If, as their leader, as their teacher, I can adjust my leadership style or my teaching style to their needs, then they're going to definitely be more successful in this program.